Hey guys, Sean at Top 5 Fit here. Today I'd like to go through a little bit of a tricep dip progression set. So what we'll start with is easiest to obviously a little bit harder difficulty-wise and different body position. A lot of times when I'm seeing people in the gyms or looking at people in the gyms doing bench dips, which what we're going to start out with today, it tends to be a lot of emphasis on the shoulder and not a lot of emphasis on the elbow. So today we're going to kind of go over that a little bit just to make sure that our body positions are proper when doing these. It's a real easy way to hit the triceps, and you really don't need a lot of equipment, obviously, just a sturdy place to obviously place your hands, and that can also hold your body weight. So we'll start with a bench dip, and what that basically is your feet need to be slightly in front of you, a little wider than shoulder width apart. Not really a big deal right now because eventually we're going to shift out of this position. Hand placement, however, does kind of matter. You're going to want to make sure and keep your fingers forward for these. A lot of times I see people actually try to put their hands in the opposite direction. It's going to put a lot of stress on your wrist that doesn't need to be there. So fingers forward, a little wider than shoulder width, just outside of your hips. What you're going to do is basically swing your hips off of the bench, placing all of the load into your arms and your triceps. Now, make sure you're dropping the hips straight down as close to the bench as possible and putting as much bend in the elbows as you can. I'm still keeping my feet in front of me in case I get in trouble or get caught down there. I can use my legs to help myself back up. Remember, this is a progression video, so for people who have never done these before, that's a real easy way to get yourself in and out of the position without worrying about doing damage to your arms or your shoulders. So let's take a look at that again. Fingers off the edge of the bench, just outside the hips. Swing the hips off so that the weight is now, your body weight is now positioned into your arms. Bend your elbows, drop your body and hips down right in front of the bench, keeping all of the weight in the triceps. And then press through the heels of your hands back up until the arms are straight. A couple of don'ts that you want to be careful with this exercise. One, once you swing the hips off, you want to make sure and keep them fairly close to the bench and in between your hands. A lot of times people can actually get out way too far. And instead of actually bending the elbows, they're actually hinging on their wrists and their shoulders. Now that's not actually a dip at all. All that does, again, is place unnecessary stress in the wrists, and it puts your shoulders in a vulnerable position as well. You're not even using your triceps to do the movement. So try to keep those hips as close to the bench as possible, and then emphasize the bend in the elbow. That way you know you're actually using your triceps. Next, we'll take a look at a dip on the actual dip bars. Lots of different opinions on how these should be performed. I do have a touch of gymnastics in my background, so I'm going to go off of basically what my instructors taught me and how I've carried them on throughout my training career. If you have the option in the beginning, especially if you're not used to these, find something to actually step up onto. In this case, I'm actually going to use the base of my dip rack. And I say that because a lot of times people might not have the shoulder range of motion to actually load into position here. And that can cause injury, and we're not about hurting anybody. We're obviously just trying to enhance your overall program and, make sure that you get the best out of your training. So to start, hands on the bars here. Obviously, there's all kinds of handles on here, but for what we're doing right now, I'm going to go ahead and use the grips that are actually parallel to the ground. Placing one foot on the rack, I'll go ahead and load up. Same rules apply as the bench dip. We want to slowly place our weight into the hands, into straight arms, making sure that the wrists are tight and strong, but not necessarily locked out. I actually turn my palms down towards the ground just a little bit for stability. Focusing on bending in the elbows, lower the body weight as close to the ground as you can get, and then press right back up to an extended position. Now, the jury is out as to whether or not you actually want to bend your knees or keep them straight. Like I said, my background, a little bit of background in gymnastics. my instructors told me to keep the legs straight. And the reason for that is keeping the weight and the load in the triceps and not pushing it all into the shoulders and the chest. A lot of times, even myself, if I bend my knees, I have a tendency to take my body forward. And now it's more of a press instead of a dip. When the legs are straight, I'm focusing on keeping the weight in the elbows and in the triceps without taking my chest too far forward. As far as isolating the triceps are concerned, in an exercise like this, it's never just going to be a tricep exercise. Your shoulders are involved, your pecs are involved, your back is involved, just to keep you, obviously, in the exercise. However, it is predominantly a tricep exercise, so the straighter you can keep the body, the more weight and load you're going to keep in that muscle group. A couple of don'ts we want to talk about with dips here, and I guess instead of calling them don'ts, I should call them pet peeves. This is not a momentum-based activity. You should be very deliberate on the positive and negative portion of the movement. So any swinging, any throwing of your body weight at all can basically just set you up for injury, and you're really not getting much out of it. An example of that is, every now and then I'll see people in the gym, of course, and they'll get in and it turns into a bounce, sometimes even a kick off of the ground. That's a real easy way to pop a shoulder out. That's a real easy way to tear tissue. So control matters when you're doing any kind of body weight exercise for that matter, but at least in my opinion, it's pretty important when it comes to dips. So you want to make sure that even from the beginning, it is a smooth positive, smooth negative, without any type of momentum at all in the movement. Next progression of the dip work, adding load, adding weight. Now, before we get started, there are many ways to add load to your dips. Right off the bat, for those of you who are obviously experienced doing this, there is the belt and the chain in which you can strap 45, 25, 35-pound plate, multiple 45-pound plates, whatever your heart desires as far as load is concerned. But that belt basically has a large leather plate that sits across your back and a chain that drops the weight down in between the legs. If you are one of those who likes to do dips with knees bent, then that may be perfect for you. But for those of us who actually like to do dips with our legs straight, I use an alternative method, an alternative fact, if you will. Yes, I did it. So we're going to start with a 20-pound dumbbell. And I like to, again, load up into the dip before grabbing it. Now, real quick note on placement as far as where I'm going to grab the dumbbell and how. Right off the bat, when you're looking at the anatomy of your foot, you have an arch here, okay? And that's basically where the handle of the dumbbell is going to go. So that this part of your foot is where you're actually supporting the edge or the weight of the dumbbell. Any place else, it is extremely painful, and you run the risk of dropping the dumbbell. I personally like to load dips with dumbbells over the belt because if something does go wrong, I can get rid of the weight, as opposed to if it is attached to my waist or there's plates between my knees, if I come off of this rack, that weight is still on me, and it just sets you up for injury, and again, we're trying not to do that. So, loading into position, step up, bring the body back, placing the weight in the arms. A slow lower, grab right between the arch, and pick it right back up. On the way down, obviously, you can set the dumbbell right back down on its end and then step back without worrying about extra weight being on your body when you step out of the exercise. Another nice thing about doing weighted dips this way, you can climb the weight significantly. Multiple 45-pound plates between the knees. I don't like that. There's clanging, there's movement, there's things that can throw you off balance. Whereas here, I can go straight for a 70-pound dumbbell, holding the same position, and still get an effective dip with extra load. Let's take a look at that. That about wraps it up for our dip series. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment box below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again.